In last week's daily devotion video, our Director of Youth Ministries, Jenna Bush, shared with us about the importance of keeping Jesus at the center of what we do. She had the bicycle wheel and talked about all the various ways that we enjoy life, the different commitments we have and people we get to spend time with, what's important to us. But at the center of it all, she reminded us, is supposed to be Jesus. And she confessed, and I'll confess, that's not always easy to do, but it is our calling, and it makes life better when we do it. I was thinking in response to that, what are some ways that help us to keep Jesus at the center of our lives? Holy Communion, which we've talked about in these devotions recently and celebrated Sunday, is a way to keep Jesus at the center. We reformat our own ways of being in the world when we realize that He is the focal point and that it is His gift to us. And in response to this gift that gives us life and nourishes us, we live our lives. Worship in general can do that for us. When we come to worship, participate in worship, even join online in worship, we realize this is about me being part of something bigger than me. It's about glorifying God. And it's a gift in my life to have the opportunity to do that. Prayer, to recognize that we can't do this on our own and that we need God's Spirit to help us, to sustain us, to guide us, to hear us, and that God is gracious enough to want to be in relationship with us and have that kind of communication. And of course, we look at Jesus' life, and it's a model for our lives, and we know that if He's the center of our lives, then we need to format our lives around Him. So we look at how He served others. That was one of His primary actions in this world, was to come and to serve others. And of course, the ultimate service to us was the sharing, the giving of His life for us. And then Scripture is another that comes to mind. Being engaged in Scripture so that God can speak to us and God can speak through the words of the Scripture, and that we can know our story. The other night, I was part of a youth conversation. The youth has spent the last 3 weeks thinking about the Scriptures and how they are so significant to a life of faith and deserve our time and attention and study and reflection. And so I asked for some questions from the youth about what they've wondered about the Scriptures, and some were, fairly predictable. How many books are in the Bible? 66. Why are there 2 Testaments? We talked about the fact that it's a story that has grown, and just because we call it old doesn't mean it's out of date. How many old people are really great mentors and guides for our lives, and their collective wisdom and their life experience makes our lives better. So old doesn't mean antiquated, it just means previous, that the Scriptures from the Old Testament precede those of the New Testament. And of course, in the New Testament, we have this new covenant, this new established relationship through Christ with God, and how those come alive in our practices and in our faith. They ask, why is it so long? Which I thought was a great question. The Bible is long because there's a lot to say. I told them I can summarize in just a paragraph what the Bible's about. From Genesis to Revelation, you've got a story of this God who cares enough about us to create us, to sustain us, to pursue us, to forgive us, to seek to make right the creation that God originally ordered. And that God asks of us a faithful life. God demands of us obedience. But even when we're disobedient, God is steadfast in God's love and tries to bring us back to God's ways, and to sometimes chasten us as a parent would, but all for the purpose of making us more faithful and enjoy this life more fully. We talked about how there are the reason, so that's the short version, but the reason the Bible is so long is it tells that story in a variety of ways. Early on, Adam and Eve break God's primary commandment, and when they do so, it leads to what we call the fall, of course, the introduction of sin into this world. And then, so that's Genesis. In Romans, the New Testament, we get Paul saying, I do the very thing I hate. He's recognizing that it's an impulse in him to go the opposite direction from what he wanted to do. Old Testament, New Testament, it's a story that we are part of. It's our story. So the Bible is long because it's our family story. And just as I couldn't begin to tell you even the little bit I know of my ancestry in a couple of minutes, the Bible can't possibly do that for our whole faith traditions family story. So that's why it's long, it's why it's involved, and It's why we find ourselves in it, because it's real people. It's our story, our ancestors that we are very much a part of because it's true to us. And finally, I just want to lift before you what we'll spend the next couple of days in written form on devotions. Psalm 119. It's the longest psalm in the Bible, 176 verses. They estimate it takes about 15 minutes to read this psalm. So probably not the one you're going to memorize, and maybe the one you've avoided. But it's a psalm that speaks of how Scripture is a gift to us and what it asks of us. So just the first few verses, Psalm 119. Happy are those whose way is blameless, who walk in the law of the Lord. Happy are those who keep his decrees, who seek him with their whole heart, who also do no wrong, but walk in his ways. You have commanded your precepts to be kept diligently. Oh, that my ways may be steadfast in keeping your statutes. That's just the beginning of Psalm 119. We'll look at some more verses in the next couple of days. But recognize that call to find happiness, to find contentment in seeking out God's will, and the Scripture as being a primary place to do that. Have a wonderful day.